In the shadows of society, where secrets linger and truth is buried, stories of betrayal, murder, and mysteries unfold. Welcome to Occupation Murderer, where we dwell into the darkest corners of the human mind, one chilling tale at a time.
Rodney Alcala, charming, intelligent, and one of the most sadistic serial killers in history, he was a master manipulator who used his charming skills to lure his victims into a deadly trap. But before he became a notorious murderer, there were warning signs that the world ignored. In this episode, I'll dive into Alcala's disturbing past and the harrowing survival stories of two victims who barely escaped his clutches. This is part one of a two-part series, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. I'm Mary. Come with me to investigate this case. Alcala was born on August 23, 1943. He lived in Mexico before moving to Los Angeles at age 8. He enlisted in the Army at 17 years old, but was discharged in 1964 following a nervous breakdown and allegations of sexual misconduct. He graduated in 1968 from the University of California with a fine arts degree, but fled to New York University soon after he committed his first attack. Whenever he went to New York University, he went by the name John Berger. In 1978, he participated in the famous TV show called The Dating Game. And by this time, technology for background checks did not exist, so no one was aware that Alcala had a criminal record by this point, including an attempted murder charge of an 8-year-old girl, and we'll get into that story in just a second. In the show, he competed as one of 3 bachelors for the Bachelorette Cheryl Bradshaw's attention. Throughout the episode, Alcala enthusiastically answered the Bachelorette's questions, comparing himself to a banana, saying that nighttime is when he really gets good, and acting out the part of a dirty old man. And using his charm, just like with all his victims, he won the date. Bachelorette Bradshaw sensed something was wrong. After the show, she refused the date. She told contestant coordinator Ellen Metzger, "I can't go out with this guy. There's weird vibes that are coming off of him. He's very strange. I'm not comfortable." Bradshaw had asked Metzger if it was going to be a problem that she refused the date, but she said no, of course it wasn't. And matter of fact, Metzger and her husband had a talk before they agreed in the end to put Alcala on the show. It was said that her and her husband had a talk because the husband actually also had a feeling, saying that there was something about his personality that seemed off and that he wasn't sure if he was going to be okay with putting Alcala on the show. But in the end, they had agreed to it. And Bachelor number 2 had sat next to Alcala and described him as quote-unquote creepy, and said that when they were in the green room together before the show started, Alcala told him, "I always get my girl." So going back to the 8-year-old, it was on September 25th, 1969. Second grader Tali Shapiro was walking to school on Hollywood's Sunset Boulevard when a car pulled up beside her. Of course, the driver was Rodney, and he had asked her if she wanted a ride. Tali said, "I told him I didn't talk to strangers. That is when he told me he knew my parents. I really didn't want to get into the car with him, but I was raised to respect my elders. I didn't know to fear people." Whenever Tali got in the car, a Good Samaritan saw and thought it was suspicious, so he followed Rodney to his apartment and called the police. Former Los Angeles police officer Chris Camacho reached the location and knocked on the door. Camacho told CBS News, "I said, 'Police officer, open the door, I need to talk to you.' This male appeared at the door. I will always remember that face at that door. Very evil face. And he says, I'm in the shower, I gotta get dressed." And I told him, "Okay, you got 10 seconds. Finally, I kicked the door in. The image will be forever with me. We could see in the kitchen that there was a body on the floor, a lot of blood." Alcala had escaped through the back door, slipping through the police's grasp. Matt Murphy, Orange County Deputy DA, said, "They say a picture says 1,000 words, and that image of those little white Mary Janes on that floor with that metal bar that he used to strangle her with, and that puddle of blood, it just looks like that too much blood to come out of a tiny little 8-year-old like that." The police started searching the house, seeing if they could find Rodney, but obviously he had escaped through the back door. Tali wasn't breathing, everyone thought she was dead, but moments later she started gagging, trying to breathe, and everyone believed that it was a miracle. Rodney had strangled her, almost killed her, it became very close, and if the police officer didn't show up, then she very well would have been dead. And Rodney had also raped Tali. Tali was the first known victim of Rodney Alcala, but years later they found out about Morgan Rowan, and she was actually the first victim of him. Morgan Rowan and Rodney Alcala had first met in 1965 when she was 13 years old. They were at a teen nightclub with friends. The girls thought Alcala was attractive. She said, "He laughed easily, told stories. Young girls loved him. I never saw that as dangerous, but actually it was." And according to Rowan, Alcala kept looking over at them, smiling. Rowan lightly scratched his arm with her fingernails to get his attention. He told her to stop, but she didn't, so he grabbed her arm and dragged her into an alley behind the club. Alcala knocked her unconscious and put a large industrial dumpster against her, and after that incident, Rowan avoided Alcala for the next 3 years. However, in 1968, they met again. Rowan's family were going to move to New York in just a couple of days, so before they left, Rowan and her friends went out to have a going-away celebration on the Sunset Strip. Rowan had recognized Alcala in the driver's seat and was afraid when he didn't leave. They went to the Strip, and then a little while later, they went to a restaurant. At the restaurant, Rowan went to the bathroom, and when she came back, Alcala said they were all ready to go back to the Strip. So they had gotten in the car, but suddenly Alcala made a turn and stopped in front of his house. He gave them weed, they smoked, and listened to music in his living room very loudly. And while everybody was distracted, and all of his friends, still listening to music, smoking weed, not really paying attention to anybody, Alcala pulled Rowan into a bedroom and locked the door behind him. Rowan said she kept backing away from him until she was against a wall because she knew that she was in trouble. She said, "He took his belt off and wrapped it around his fist. I tried to be brave and said, 'No, you can't keep me here.' And he just punched me between the eyes as hard as he could." Rowan said her head hit the wall and she fell to her knees and saw stars, but was still conscious. Alcala had a knife and cut the tie of her blouse around her neck, nicking her skin. She said that she felt the blood going down her chest. Alcala shoved his belt in her mouth, blocking her airway, and bonded her wrists with a necktie. He punched her in the stomach until she felt her ribs breaking, then took his knife to cut off the rest of her clothes and raped her. Rowan's friends noticed her and Alcala was missing, so they tried to get the bedroom door open. They started pounding on the door, but once they couldn't get it open, Mike broke in through the window. Alcala had stood up, and there was blood all over his shirt from the blood that was trailing down her chest, and all he said was, "Take her." Rowan was traumatized and slept next to her parents' bed after moving, but she never spoke or told her parents about what had happened. When she was in New York City, a friend mailed her a newspaper about Alcala's rape and attempted murder of Shapiro. Rowan completely blamed herself since she never spoke up about what had happened. And I can completely understand where she was coming from, how she blamed herself, because, she thought that she could have stopped what happened from the 8-year-old being raped and almost killed, because she believed that if she did, speak up and say something about Alcala and just making a report about it, maybe the 8-year-old assault could have stopped. It couldn't have happened, but, it's not really her fault, but I can understand why she blamed herself. But Tali Shapiro and Morgan Rowan were the lucky ones. They survived, but they were the only ones. Tune in for part 2, where we dive into the horrific fate of those who weren't so lucky. The way Rodney Alcala lured, tortured, and killed his victims will leave you speechless. You won't want to miss it. And always, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and view the podcast. Until next time, stay safe.